This is Terry Bible Knight, your reader. We are on Chapter 10 of Rick Riordan's Sea of Monsters, which is part of his Percy Jackson and the Olympians series. Chapter 10 is called We Hitch a Ride with Dead Confederates. "Thermos!" I screamed as we hurtled toward the water. What? Annabeth must have thought I lost my mind. She was holding on to the boat straps for dear life, her hair flying straight up like a torch. But Tyson understood. He managed to open my duffel bag and take out Hermes' magical thermos without losing his grip on it or the boat. Arrows and javelins whistled past us. I grabbed the thermos and hoped I was doing the right thing. "Hang on." "I am hanging on," Annabeth yelled. "Tighter!" I hooked my feet under the boat's inflatable bench, and as Tyson grabbed Annabeth and me by the backs of our shirts, I gave the thermos cap a quarter turn. Instantly, a white sheet of wind jetted out of the thermos and propelled us sideways, turning our downward plummet into a 45-degree crash landing. The wind seemed to laugh as it shot from the thermos, like it was glad to be free. As we hit the ocean, we bumped once, twice, skipping like a stone. Then we were whizzing along like a speedboat, salt spray in our faces and nothing but sea ahead. I heard a wail of outrage from the ship behind us, but we were already out of weapon range. The Princess Andromeda faded to the size of a white toy boat in the distance, and then it was gone. As we raced over the sea, Annabeth and I tried to send an iris message to Chiron. We figured it was important we let somebody know what Luke was doing, and we didn't know who else to trust. The wind from the thermos stirred up a nice sea spray that made a rainbow in the sunlight, perfect for an iris message, but our connection was still poor. When Annabeth threw a gold drachma into the mist and prayed for the rainbow goddess to show us Chiron, his face appeared all right, but there was some kind of weird strobe light flashing in the background and rock music blaring, like he was at a dance club. We told him about sneaking away from camp, and Luke and the Princess Andromeda and the golden box for Kronos' remains, but between the noise on his end and the rushing wind and water on our end, I'm not sure how much he heard. "Percy!" Chiron yelled. "You have to watch out for—" His voice was drowned out by loud shouting behind him, a bunch of voices whooping it up like Comanche warriors. "What?" I yelled. "Curse my relatives!" Chiron ducked as a plate flew over his head and shattered somewhere out of sight. "Annabeth, you shouldn't have let Percy leave camp, but if you do get the fleece—" "Yeah, baby!" somebody behind Chiron yelled. "Woo!" The music got cranked up, subwoofers so loud it made our boat vibrate. "Miami," Chiron was yelling. "I'll try to keep watch." Our misty screen smashed apart like someone on the other side had thrown a bottle at it, and Chiron was gone. An hour later, we spotted land, a long stretch of beach lined with high-rise hotels. The water became crowded with fishing boats and tankers. A Coast Guard cruiser passed on our starboard side and then turned around like it wanted a second look. Guess it isn't every day they see a yellow lifeboat with no engine going 100 knots an hour manned by 3 kids. "That's Virginia Beach," Annabeth said as we approached the shoreline. "Oh my gods, how did the Princess Andromeda travel so far overnight? That's like 530 nautical miles," I said. She stared at me. "How did you know that?" "I'm not sure." Annabeth thought for a moment. "Percy, what's our position?" 36 degrees, 44 minutes north, 76 degrees, 2 minutes west, I said immediately. And then I shook my head. "Whoa, how did I know that?" "Because of your dad," Annabeth guessed. "When you're at sea, you have perfect bearings. That is so cool." I wasn't sure about that. I didn't want to be a human GPS unit. But before I could say anything, Tyson tapped my shoulder. "Other boat is coming." I looked back. The Coast Guard vessel was definitely on our tail now. Its lights were flashing and it was gaining speed. "We can't let them catch us," I said. "They'll ask too many questions." "Keep going into Chesapeake Bay," Annabeth said. "I know a place we can hide." I didn't ask what she meant or how she knew the area so well. I risked loosening the thermos cap a little more, and a fresh burst of wind set us rocketing around the northern tip of Virginia Beach and into Chesapeake Bay. The Coast Guard boat fell farther and farther behind. We didn't slow down until the shores of the bay narrowed on either side, and I realized we'd entered the mouth of a river. I could feel the change from salt water to fresh water. Suddenly I was tired and frazzled, like I was coming down off a sugar high. I didn't know where I was anymore or which way to steer the boat. It was a good thing Annabeth was directing me. "There," she said, "past that sandbar." We veered into a swampy area choked with marsh grass. I beached the lifeboat at the foot of a giant cypress. Vine-covered trees loomed above us. Insects chirred in the woods. The air was muggy and hot, and steam curled off the river. Basically, it wasn't Manhattan, and I didn't like it. "Come on," Annabeth said. "It's just down the bank." "What is?" I asked. "Just follow." She grabbed a duffel bag. "And we better cover the boat. We don't want to draw attention." After burying the lifeboat with branches, Tyson and I followed Annabeth along the shore, our feet sinking in red mud. A snake slithered past my shoe and disappeared into the grass. "Not a good place," Tyson said. He swatted the mosquitoes that were forming a buffet line on his arm. After another few minutes, Annabeth said, "Here." All I saw was a bunch of brambles. Then Annabeth moved aside a woven circle of branches like a door, and I realized I was looking into a camouflage shelter. The inside was big enough for 3, even with Tyson being the third. The walls were woven from plant material, like a Native American hut, but they looked pretty waterproof. Stacked in the corner was everything you could want for a campout: sleeping bags, blankets, an ice chest, a kerosene lamp. There were demigod provisions, too: bronze javelin tips, a quiver full of arrows, an extra sword, and a box of ambrosia. The place smelled musty, like it had been vacant for a long time. "A half-blood hideout." I looked at Annabeth in awe. "You made this place?" "Thalia and I," she said quietly. "And Luke." That shouldn't have bothered me. I mean, I knew Thalia and Luke had taken care of Annabeth when she was little. I knew the 3 of them had been runaways together, hiding from monsters, surviving on their own before Grover found them and tried to get them to Half-Blood Hill. But whenever Annabeth talked about the time she'd spent with them, I kind of felt, I don't know, uncomfortable? No, that's not the word. The word is jealous. "So," I said, "you don't think Luke will look for us here?" She shook her head. "We made a dozen safe houses like this. I doubt Luke even remembers where they are, or cares." She threw herself down on the blankets and started going through her duffel bag. Her body language made it pretty clear she didn't want to talk. Tyson," I said, "would you mind scouting around outside, like look for a wilderness convenience store or something?" "Convenience store?" Yeah, for snacks. Powdered donuts or something. Just don't go too far." "Powdered donuts," Tyson said earnestly. "I will look for powdered donuts in the wilderness." He headed outside and started calling, "Here, donuts." Once he was gone, I sat down across from Annabeth. "Hey, I'm sorry about, seeing Luke." "It's not your fault." She unsheathed her knife and started cleaning the blade with a rag. "He let us go too easily," I said. I hoped I'd been imagining it, but Annabeth nodded. I was thinking the same thing. When we overheard him say about a gamble and they'll take the bait, I think he was talking about us. "The fleece is the bait, or Grover?" She studied the edge of her knife. "I don't know, Percy. Maybe he wants the fleece for himself. Maybe he's hoping he'll do the hard work, and then he can steal it from us. I just can't believe he would poison the tree." "What did he mean," I asked, "that Thalia would have been on his side?" "He's wrong." "You don't sound sure." Annabeth glared at me, and I started to wish I hadn't asked her about this whole thing while she was holding a knife. "Percy, you know who you remind me of most? Thalia. You guys are so much alike, it's scary. I mean, either you would have been best friends or you would have strangled each other." "Well, then let's go with best friends." "Thalia got angry with her dad sometimes, and so do you. Would you turn against Olympus because of that?" I stared at the quiver of arrows in the corner. "No." "Okay, then. Neither would she. Luke's wrong." Annabeth stuck her knife blade into the dirt. I wanted to ask her about the prophecy Luke had mentioned and what it had to do with my 16th birthday, but I figured she wouldn't tell me. Chiron had made it pretty clear I wasn't allowed to hear it until the gods decided otherwise. "So what did Luke mean about Cyclops?" As I asked. "He said you of all people." "I know what he said. He was talking about the real reason Thalia died." I waited, not sure what to say. Annabeth drew a shaky breath. "You can never trust a Cyclops, Percy. 6 years ago, on the night Grover was leading us to Half-Blood Hill, She was interrupted when the door of the hut creaked open. Tyson crawled in. "Powdered doughnuts," he said proudly, holding up a pastry box. Annabeth stared at him. "Where did you get that? We're in the middle of nowhere, in the wilderness. There's nothing around here." 50 feet, Tyson said. "Monster donut shop, just over the hill." "This is bad," Annabeth muttered. Now we're crouching behind a tree, staring at the donut shop in the middle of the woods. It looked brand new, with brightly lit windows, a parking area, and a little road leading off into the forest. But there was nothing else around and no cars parked on the lot. We could see one employee reading a magazine behind the cash register. That was it. On the store's marquee, in huge black letters that even I could read, it said, "Monster Donut." A cartoon ogre was taking a bite out of the O in Monster. The place smelled good, like fresh-baked chocolate donuts. "This shouldn't be here," Annabeth whispered. "It's wrong." "What?" I asked. "It's a donut shop." "Shh." Why are we whispering? Tyson went in and bought a dozen. Nothing happened to him. He's a monster. Oh, come on, Annabeth. Monster Donut doesn't mean monsters. It's a chain. We've got them in New York. "A chain," she agreed. "And don't you think it's strange that one appeared immediately after you told Tyson to get donuts? Right here in the middle of the woods?" I thought about it. It did seem a little weird. But donut shops weren't real high on my list of sinister forces. "It could be a nest," Annabeth explained. Tyson whimpered. I doubt he understood what Annabeth was saying any better than I did, but her tone was making him nervous. He'd plowed through half a dozen donuts from his box and was getting powdered sugar all over his face. "A nest for what?" I asked. "Haven't you ever wondered how franchise stores pop up so fast?" she asked. "One day there's nothing, and then the next day, boom, new burger place or coffee shop, whatever. First a single store, then two, then four, exact replicas spreading across the country." No, I never thought about it. Percy, some of the chains multiply so fast because all their locations are magically linked to the life force of a monster. Some children of Hermes figured out how to do it back in the 1950s. They breed... She froze. "What?" I demanded. "They breed what?" "No sudden moves," Annabeth said, like her life depended on it. "Very slowly turn around." And then I heard it. A scraping noise, like something large dragging its belly through the leaves. I turned and saw a rhino-sized thing moving through the shadows of the trees. It was hissing, its front half writhing in all different directions. I couldn't understand what I was seeing at first. Then I realized the thing had multiple necks, at least 7, each topped with a hissing reptilian head. Its skin was leathery, and under each neck it wore a plastic bib that read, "I'm a monster donut kid." I took out my ballpoint pen, but Annabeth locked eyes with me, a silent warning. "Not yet." I understood. A lot of monsters have terrible eyesight. It was possible the Hydra might pass us by, but if I uncapped my sword now, the bronze glow would certainly get its attention. We waited. The Hydra was only a few feet away. It seemed to be sniffing the ground and the trees like it was hunting for something. Then I noticed 2 of the heads were ripping apart a piece of yellow canvas, one of our duffel bags. The thing had already been to our campsite, and it was following our scent. My heart pounded. I'd seen a stuffed Hydra head trophy at camp before, but that did nothing to prepare me for the real thing. Each head was diamond-shaped, like a rattlesnake's, but the mouths were lined with jagged rows of shark-like teeth. Tyson was trembling. He stepped back and accidentally snapped a twig. Immediately, all 7 heads turned toward us and hissed. "Scatter!" Annabeth yelled, and she dove to the right. I rolled to the left. One of the Hydra heads spat an arc of green liquid that shot past my shoulder and splashed against an elm. The trunk smoked and began to disintegrate. The whole tree toppled straight toward Tyson, who still hadn't moved, petrified by the monster that was now right in front of him. "Tyson!" I tackled him with all my might, knocking him aside just as the Hydra lunged and the tree crashed on top of 2 of its heads. The Hydra stumbled backward, yanking its heads free and then wailing in outrage at the fallen tree. All 7 heads shot acid, and the elm tree melted into a steaming pool of muck. "Move," I told Tyson. I ran to one side and uncapped Riptide, hoping to draw the monster's attention. It worked. The sight of celestial bronze is hateful to most monsters. As soon as my glowing blade appeared, the Hydra whipped toward it with all its heads, hissing and baring its teeth. The good news, Tyson was momentarily out of danger. The bad news, I was about to be melted into a puddle of goo. One of the heads snapped at me experimentally. Without thinking, I swung my sword. "No!" Annabeth yelled. Too late. I sliced the Hydra's head clean off. It rolled away into the grass, leaving a flailing stump, which immediately stopped bleeding and began to swell like a balloon. In a matter of seconds, the wounded neck split into 2 necks, each of which grew a full-size head. Now I'm looking at an 8-headed Hydra. "Percy," Annabeth scolded, "you just opened another monster donut shop somewhere." I dodged a spray of acid. "I'm about to die, and you're worried about that? How do we kill it?" "Fire," Annabeth said. "We have to have fire." As soon as she said that, I remembered the story. The Hydra's heads would only stop multiplying if we burned the stumps before they regrew. That's what Heracles had done anyway. But we had no fire. I backed up toward the river. The Hydra followed. Annabeth moved in on my left and tried to distract one of the heads, parrying its teeth with her knife. But another head swung sideways like a club and knocked her into the muck. "No hitting my friends!" Tyson charged in, putting himself between the Hydra and Annabeth. As Annabeth got to her feet, Tyson started smashing at the monster heads with his fists so fast it reminded me of the whack-a-mole game at the arcade. But even Tyson couldn't fend off the Hydra forever. We kept inching backward, dodging acid splashes and deflecting snapping heads without cutting them off, but I knew we were only postponing our deaths. Eventually, we would make a mistake and that thing would kill us. Then I heard a strange sound, a chug, 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 that at first I thought was my heartbeat. It was so powerful it made the riverbank shake. "What's that noise?" Annabeth shouted, keeping her eyes on the Hydra. "Steam engine," Tyson said. "What?" I ducked as the Hydra spat acid over my head. Then from the river behind us, a familiar female voice shouted, "There, prepare the 32-pounder." I didn't dare look away from the Hydra, but if that was who I thought it was behind me, I figured we now had enemies on 2 fronts. A gravelly male voice said, "They're too close, m'lady." "Damn those heroes," the girl said. "Full steam ahead." "Aye, m'lady." "Fire at will, Captain." Annabeth understood what was happening. A split second before I did, she yelled, "Hit the dirt!" and we dove for the ground as an earth-shattering boom echoed from the river. There was a flash of light, a column of smoke, and the Hydra exploded right in front of us, showering us with nasty green slime that vaporized as soon as it hit, the way monster guts tend to do. "Gross!" screamed Annabeth. "Steamship!" yelled Tyson. I stood, coughing from the cloud of gunpowder smoke that was rolling across the banks. Chugging toward us down the river was the strangest ship I'd ever seen. It rode low in the water like a submarine, its deck plated with iron. In the middle was a trapezoid-shaped casemate with slats on each side for cannons. A flag waved from the top, a wild boar and spear on a blood-red field. Lining the deck were zombies in gray uniforms, dead soldiers with shimmering faces that only partially covered their skulls, like the ghouls I'd seen in the underworld guarding Hades' palace. The ship was an ironclad, a Civil War battle cruiser. I could just make out the name along the prow in moss-covered letters, SS Birmingham. And standing next to the smoking cannon that had almost killed us, wearing full Greek battle armor, was Clarice. "Losers," she sneered, "but I suppose I have to rescue you. Come aboard." And that was the end of Chapter 10. Chapter 11 is called Clarice Blows Up Everything. I'm Terry Bible Knight, your reader. "You are in so much trouble," Clarice said. "We'd just finished a ship tour we didn't want, through dark rooms overcrowded with dead sailors. We'd seen the coal bunker, the boilers and engine, which huffed and groaned like it would explode any minute. We'd seen the pilot house and the powder magazine and gunnery deck, Clarice's favorite, with 2 Dahlgren smooth-bore cannons on the port and starboard sides and a Brook 9-inch rifled gun fore and aft, all specially refitted to fire celestial bronze cannonballs. Everywhere we went, Dead Confederate sailors stared at us, their ghostly bearded faces shimmering over their skulls. They approved of Annabeth because she told them she was from Virginia. They were interested in me, too, because my name was Jackson, like the Southern general, but then I ruined it by telling them I was from New York. They all hissed and muttered curses about Yankees. Tyson was terrified of them. All through the tour, he insisted Annabeth hold his hand, which she didn't look too thrilled about. Finally, we were escorted to dinner. The CSS Birmingham captain's quarters were about the size of a walk-in closet, but still much bigger than any other room on board. The table was set with white linen and china. Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, potato chips, and Dr. Peppers were served by skeletal crewmen. I didn't want to eat anything served by ghosts, but my hunger overruled my fear. Tantalus expelled you for eternity, Clarice told us smugly. Mr. D said if any of you show your face at camp again, he'll turn you into squirrels and run you over with his SUV. Did they give you this ship, I asked. Of course not. My father did. Ares? Clarice sneered. You think your daddy is the only one with sea power? The spirits on the losing side of every war owe a tribute to Ares. That's their curse for being defeated. I prayed to my father for a naval transport, and here it is. These guys will do anything I tell them. Won't you, Captain? The captain stood behind her looking stiff and angry, his glowing green eyes fixed on me with a hungry stare. If it means an end to this infernal war, ma'am, peace at last, we'll do anything. Destroy anyone. Clarice smiled. Destroy anyone. I like that. Tyson gulped. Clarice, Annabelle said, Luke might be after the fleece too. We saw him. He's got the coordinates, and he's heading south. He has a cruise ship full of monsters. Good. I'll blow him out of the water. You don't understand, Annabeth said. We have to combine forces. Let us help you. No. Clarice pounded the table. This is my quest, smart girl. Finally, I get to be the hero, and you two will not steal my chance. Where are your cabin mates, I asked. You were allowed to take 2 friends with you, weren't you? They didn't. I let them stay behind to protect the camp. You mean even the people in your own cabin wouldn't help you? Shut up, Percy. I don't need them. Or you. Clarice, I said, Tantalus is using you. He doesn't care about the camp. He'd love to see it destroyed. He's setting you up to fail. No, I don't care what the Oracle... She stopped herself. What? I said. What did the Oracle tell you? Nothing. Clarice's ears turned pink. All you need to know is that I'm finishing this quest and you're not helping. On the other hand, I can't let you go. So we're prisoners? Annabeth asked. Guests. For now. Clarice propped her feet up on the white linen tablecloth and opened another Dr. Pepper. Captain, take them below. Assign them hammocks on the berth deck. If they don't mind their manners, show them how we deal with enemy spies. The dream came as soon as I fell asleep. Grover was sitting at his loom, desperately unraveling his wedding train, when the boulder door rolled aside and the Cyclops bellowed, Aha! Grover yelped, Dear, I didn't. You were so quiet. Unraveling, Polyphemus roared, so that's the problem. No, I wasn't. Come. Polyphemus grabbed Grover around the waist and half carried, half dragged him through the tunnels of the cave. Grover struggled to keep his high heels on his hoofs. His veil kept tilting on his head, threatening to come off. The Cyclops pulled him into a warehouse-sized cavern decorated with sheep junk. There was a wool-covered lazy-boy recliner and a wool-covered television set, crude bookshelves loaded with sleep collectibles, coffee mugs shaped like sheep faces, plaster figurines of sheep board games, picture books, action figures. The floor was littered with piles of sheep bones and other bones that didn't exactly look like sheep, the bones of satyrs who'd come to the island looking for Pan. Polyphemus set Grover down only long enough to move another huge boulder. Daylight streamed into the cave, and Grover whimpered with longing. Fresh air. The Cyclops dragged him outside to a hilltop overlooking the most beautiful island I'd ever seen. It was shaped kind of like a saddle cut in half by an axe. There were lush green hills on either side and a wide valley in the middle split by a deep chasm that was spanned by a rope bridge. Beautiful streams rolled to the edge of the canyon and dropped off in rainbow-colored waterfalls. Parrots fluttered in the trees. Pink and purple flowers bloomed on the bushes. Hundreds of sheep grazed in the meadows, their wool glinting strangely like copper and silver coins. And at the center of the island, right next to the rope bridge, was an enormous twisted oak tree with something glittering in its lowest bough. The golden fleece. Even in a dream I could feel its power radiating across the island, making the grass greener, the flowers more beautiful. I could almost smell the nature magic at work. I could only imagine how powerful the scent would be for a satyr. Grover whimpered. "Yes," Polyphemus said proudly. "See over there? Fleece is the prize of my collection. Stole it from heroes long ago, and ever since, free food. Satyrs come from all over the world like moths to flame. Satyrs good eating. And now..." Polyphemus scooped up a wicked set of bronze shears. Grover yelped, but Polyphemus just picked up the nearest sheep like it was a stuffed animal and shaved off its wool. He handed a fluffy mass of it to Grover. "Put that on the spinning wheel," he said proudly. "Magic cannot be unraveled." "Oh, well, poor honey pie," Polyphemus grinned. "Bad weaver. Ha ha, not to worry. That thread will solve problem. Finish wedding train by tomorrow." "Isn't that thoughtful of you?" But dear," Grover gulped, "what if someone were to attack this island?" Grover looked straight at me, and I knew he was asking for my benefit. "What would keep them from marching right up here to your cave?" "Wifey's scared. So cute. Not to worry. Polyphemus has state-of-the-art security system. Have to get through my pets." "Pets?" Grover looked across the island, but there was nothing to see except sheep grazing peacefully in the meadows. "And then," Polyphemus growled, "they would have to get through me." He pounded his fist on the nearest rock, which cracked and split in half. "Now, come," he shouted, "back to the cave." Grover looked about ready to cry, so close to freedom, but so hopelessly far. Tears welled in his eyes as the boulder door rolled shut, sealing him once again in the stinky torchlit dankness of the Cyclops cave. I woke to alarm bells ringing throughout the ship. The captain's gravelly voice, "All hands on deck. Find Lady Clarice. Where's that girl?" Then his ghostly face appeared above me. "Get up, Yankee. Your friends are already above. We're approaching the entrance." "The entrance to what?" He gave me a skeletal smile. "The Sea of Monsters, of course." I stuffed my few belongings that had survived the Hydra into a sailor's canvas knapsack and slung it over my shoulder. I had a sneaking suspicion that one way or another I would not be spending another night aboard the CSS Birmingham. I was on my way upstairs when something made me freeze. A presence nearby, something familiar and unpleasant. For no particular reason, I felt like picking a fight. I wanted to punch a dead Confederate. The last time I felt that kind of anger... Instead of going up, I crept to the edge of the ventilation grate and peered down into the boiler deck. Clarice was standing right below me, talking to an image that shimmered in the steam from the boilers. A muscular man in black leather biker clothes, with a military haircut, red-tinted sunglasses, and a knife strapped to his side. My fists clenched. It was my least favorite Olympian, Ares, the god of war. "I don't want excuses, little girl," he growled. "Yes, father," Clarice mumbled. "You don't want to see me mad, do you?" "No, father." "No, father," Ares mimicked. "You're pathetic. I should have let one of my sons take this quest." "I'll succeed," Clarice promised, her voice trembling. "I'll make you proud." "You better," he warned. "You asked me for this quest, girl. If you let that slimeball Jackson kid steal it from you..." "But the Oracle..." "I don't care what it said," Ares bellowed with such force that his image shimmered. "You will succeed, and if you don't..." He raised his fist. Even though he was only a figure in the steam, Clarice flinched. "Do we understand each other?" Ares growled. The alarm bells rang again. I heard voices coming toward me, officers yelling orders to ready the cannons. Crept back from the ventilation grate and made my way upstairs to join Annabeth and Tyson on the spar deck. "What's wrong?" Annabeth asked me. "Another dream?" I nodded, but I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to think about what I'd seen downstairs. It bothered me almost as much as the dream about Grover. Clarice came up the stairs right after me. I tried not to look at her. She grabbed a pair of binoculars from a zombie officer and peered toward the horizon. "At last, Captain, full steam ahead." I looked in the same direction as she was, but I couldn't see much. The sky was overcast. The air was hazy and humid, like steam from an iron. If I squinted real hard, I could just make out a couple of dark, fuzzy splotches in the distance. My nautical senses told me we were somewhere off the coast of northern Florida, so we'd come a long way overnight, farther than any mortal ship should have been able to travel. The engine groaned as we increased speed. Tyson muttered nervously, "Too much strain on pistons, not meant for deep water." I wasn't sure how he knew that, but it made me nervous. After a few more minutes, the dark splotches ahead of us came into focus. To the north, a huge mass of rock rose out of the sea, an island with cliffs at least 100 feet tall. About half a mile south of that, the other patch of darkness was a storm brewing. The sky and sea boiled together in a roaring mass. "Hurricane?" Annabeth asked. "No," Clarice said. "Charybdis." Annabeth paled. "Are you crazy? Only way into the Sea of Monsters, straight between Charybdis and her sister, Scylla." Clarice pointed to the top of the cliffs, and I got the feeling something lived up there that I did not want to meet. "What do you mean the only way?" I asked. "The sea is wide open. Just sail around them." Clarice rolled her eyes. "Don't you know anything? If I tried to sail around them, they would just appear in my path again. If you want to get into the Sea of Monsters, you have to sail through them." "Well, what about the clashing rocks?" Annabeth said. "That's another gateway. Jason used it." "I can't blow apart rocks with my cannons," Clarice said. "Monsters, on the other hand." "You are crazy," Annabeth decided. "Watch and learn, wise girl." Clarice turned to the captain. "Set course for Charybdis." "Aye, m'lady." The engine groaned, the iron plating rattled, and the ship began to pick up speed. "Clarice," I said, "Charybdis sucks up the sea. Isn't that the story?" "And spits it back out again, yeah." "What about Scylla?" "She lives in a cave up on those cliffs. If we get too close, her sneaky heads will come down and start plucking sailors off the ship." "Choose Scylla, then," I said. "Everybody goes below deck and we chug right past." "No," Clarice insisted. "If Scylla doesn't get her easy meat, she might pick up the whole ship. Besides, she's too high to make a good target. My cannons can't shoot straight up. Charybdis just sits there at the center of her whirlwind. We're going to steam straight toward her, train our guns on her, and blow her to Tartarus." She said it with such relish, I almost wanted to believe her. The engine hummed. The boilers were heating up so much I could feel the deck getting warm beneath my feet. The smokestacks billowed. The red Ares flag whipped in the wind. As we got closer to the monsters, the sound of Charybdis got louder and louder, a horrible wet roar like the galaxy's biggest toilet being flushed. Every time she inhaled, the ship shuddered and lurched forward. Every time she exhaled, we rose in the water and were buffeted by 10-foot waves. I tried to time the whirlpool. As near as I could figure, it took her about 3 minutes to suck up and destroy everything within a half-mile radius. To avoid her, we'd have to skirt right next to Scylla's cliffs. And as bad as Scylla might be, those cliffs were looking awfully good to me. Undead sailors calmly went about their business on the spar deck. I guess they'd fought a losing cause before, so this didn't bother them. Or maybe they didn't care about getting destroyed because they were already deceased. Neither thought made me feel any better. Annabeth stood next to me, gripping the rail. "You still have your thermos full of wind?" I nodded. "But it's too dangerous to use with a whirlpool like that. More wind might just make things worse." "What about controlling the water?" she asked. "You're Poseidon's son. You've done it before." She was right. I closed my eyes and tried to calm the sea, but I couldn't concentrate. Charybdis was too loud and powerful. The waves wouldn't respond. I can't, I said miserably. We need a backup plan, Annabeth said. This isn't going to work. Annabeth is right, Tyson said. Engine's no good. What do you mean? She asked. Pressure. Pistons need fixing. Before he could explain, the cosmic toilet flushed with a mighty roar. The ship lurched forward, and I was thrown to the deck. We were in the whirlpool. Full reverse, Clarice screamed above the noise. The sea churned around us, waves crashing over the deck. The iron plating was now so hot it steamed. Get us within firing range. Make ready starboard cannons. Dead Confederates rushed back and forth. The propeller grinded into reverse, trying to slow the ship, but we kept sliding toward the center of the vortex. A zombie sailor burst out of the hold and ran to Clarice. His gray uniform was smoking. His beard was on fire. Boiler room overheating, ma'am. She's going to blow. Well, get down there and fix it. Can't, the sailor yelled. We're vaporizing in the heat. Clarice pounded the side of the casemate. All I need is a few more minutes, just enough to get in range. We're going in too fast, the captain said grimly. Prepare yourself for death. No, Tyson bellowed. I can fix it. Clarice looked at him incredulously. You? He's a cyclops, Annabeth said. He's immune to fire, and he knows mechanics. Well, then go, yelled Clarice. Tyson, no, I grabbed his arm. It's too dangerous. He patted my hand. Only way, brother. His expression was determined, confident even. I'd never seen him look like this before. I will fix it. Be right back. As I watched him follow the smoldering sailor down the hatch, I had a terrible feeling. I wanted to run after him, but the ship lurched again, and then I saw Charybdis. She appeared only a few hundred yards away through a swirl of mist and smoke and water. The first thing I noticed was the reef, a black crag of coral with a fig tree clinging to the top, an oddly peaceful thing in the middle of a maelstrom. All around it, water curved into a funnel like light around a black hole. Then I saw the horrible thing anchored to the reef just below the waterline, an enormous mouth with slimy lips and mossy teeth the size of rowboats. And worse, the teeth had braces, bands of corroded scummy metal with pieces of fish and driftwood and floating garbage stuck between them. Charybdis was an orthodontist's nightmare. She was nothing but a huge black maw with bad teeth alignment and a serious overbite, and she'd done nothing for centuries but eat without brushing after meals. As I watched, the entire sea around her was sucked into the void. Sharks, schools of fish, a giant squid, and I realized that in a few seconds the CSS Birmingham would be next. Lady Clarice, the captain shouted. Starboard and forward guns are in range. Fire, Clarice ordered. 3 rounds were blasted into the monster's maw. One blew off the edge of an incisor. Another disappeared into her gullet. The third hit one of Charybdis' retaining bands and shot back at us, snapping the Ares flag off its pole. Again, Clarice ordered. The gunners reloaded, but I knew it was hopeless. We'd have to pound the monster 100 more times to do any real damage, and we didn't have that long. We were being sucked in too fast. Then the vibrations in the deck changed. The hum of the engine got stronger and steadier. The ship shuddered, and we started pulling away from the mouth. Tyson did it, Annabeth said. Wait, Clarice said. We need to stay close. We'll die, I said. We have to move away. I gripped the rail as the ship fought against the suction. The broken Ares flag raced past us and lodged in Charybdis' braces. We weren't making much progress, but at least we were holding our own. Tyson had somehow given us just enough juice to keep the ship from being sucked in. Suddenly, the mouth snapped shut. The sea died to absolute calm. Water washed over Charybdis. Then, just as quickly as it had closed, the mouth exploded open, spitting out a wall of water, ejecting everything inedible, including our cannonballs, one of which slammed into the side of the CSS Birmingham with a ding like the bell on a carnival game. We were thrown backward on a wave that must have been 40 feet high. I used all my willpower to keep the ship from capsizing, but we were still spinning out of control, hurtling toward the cliffs on the opposite side of the strait. Another smoldering sailor burst out of the hold. He stumbled into Clarice, almost knocking them both overboard. "The engine is about to blow!" "Where's Tyson?" I demanded. "Still down there," the sailor said, "holding it together somehow, though I don't know for how much longer." The captain said, "We have to abandon ship." "No!" Clarice yelled. "We have no choice, milady. The hull is already cracking apart. She can't—" He never finished his sentence. Quick as lightning, something brown and green shot from the sky, snatched up the captain, and lifted him away. All that was left were his leather boots. "Scylla!" a sailor yelled as another column of reptilian flesh shot from the cliffs and snapped him up. It happened so fast it was like watching a laser beam rather than a monster. I couldn't even make out the thing's face, just a flash of teeth and scales. I uncapped Riptide and tried to swipe at the monster as it carried off another deckhand, but I was way too slow. "Everybody, down below!" I yelled. "We can't!" Clarice drew her own sword. "Below deck is in flames." "Lifeboats," Annabeth said. "Quick!" "They'll never get clear of the cliffs," Clarice said. "We'll all be eaten." "We have to try. Percy, the thermos." "I can't leave Tyson. We have to get the boats ready." Clarice took Annabeth's command. She and a few of her undead sailors uncovered one of the two emergency rowboats, while Scylla's head rained from the sky like a meteor shower with teeth, picking off Confederate sailors one after another. "Get the other boat." I threw Annabeth the thermos. "I'll get Tyson." "You can't," she said. "The heat will kill you." I didn't listen. I ran for the boiler room hatch when suddenly my feet weren't touching the deck anymore. I was flying straight up, the wind whistling in my ears, the side of the cliff only inches from my face. Scylla had somehow caught me by the knapsack and was lifting me up toward her lair. Without thinking, I swung my sword behind me and managed to jab the thing in her beady yellow eye. She grunted and dropped me. The fall would have been bad enough, considering I was 100 feet in the air, but as I fell, the CSS Birmingham exploded below me. Kaboom! The engine room blew, sending chunks of ironclad flying in either direction like a fiery set of wings. "Tyson!" I yelled. The lifeboats had managed to get away from the ship, but not very far. Flaming wreckage was raining down. Clarice and Annabeth would either be smashed or burned or pulled to the bottom by the force of the sinking hull, and that was thinking optimistically, assuming they got away from Scylla. Then I heard a different kind of explosion, the sound of Hermes' magic thermos being opened a little too far. White sheets of wind blasted in every direction, scattering the lifeboats, lifting me out of my free fall, and propelling me across the ocean. I couldn't see anything. I spun in the air, got clonked on the head by something hard, and hit the water with a crash that would have broken every bone in my body if I hadn't been the son of the sea god. The last thing I remembered was sinking in a burning sea, knowing that Tyson was gone forever, and wishing I was able to drown. And that's the end of Chapter 11.